Welcome to a festive edition of the Digital DJ Tips podcast. Today is an inside track edition, and that means we talk about three topics that are on the minds of our community of students this month. The topics we've chosen are how to survive a Christmas party, as a DJ of course. We're talking about why 90s synth pop and Eurodance might just be your latest secret weapon as a DJ. And finally, being the end of the year, a time to maybe get a little bit philosophical, I look back on my DJ career and pick together what unites all the varied gigs I've played over the decades. And I conclude that really, DJing, however you do it, ultimately is about connection through music. It was really fun to record today's. As ever, the students had lots to add to make it more vibrant and to add extra viewpoints and information into our podcast. And just as a reminder, as a DJ school, we are funded 100% by our students. There is no sponsorship. You'll hear no advertising. Nobody has paid us to say anything here. This is all in aid of making people better DJs and better DJ producers, as it's always been here at Digital DJ Tips. I hope you enjoy today's show. So we're talking first today about how to survive DJing Christmas parties. Not all DJs play out, of course, but I'm going to guess if you're a DJ and you've been doing it for more than a couple of weeks, you are going to be doing something this Christmas, right? It might just be playing after the pub for your friends. It might be just getting your iPad out and DJing when everyone's had a bit too much to drink at any point that you haven't figured out yet. But a lot of our students and a lot of our audience will be playing formally, i.e. getting paid. So let's talk about surviving Christmas parties. I've got a couple of stories to share with you, a lot of experience in this, and I'm going to share some stuff from the community as well. The money can be great, it really can, but it can be challenging, as we're going to find out. So I'm going to go through a few tips. So the first one, I think, is something that a lot of DJs get wrong, which is that Christmas DJing is not really about educating people. It doesn't matter whether you play serious, and I'm using serious in air inverted commas at this point, serious Christmas parties, or you think you should be playing serious Christmas parties, and all year round you're playing to crowds that are a bit more knowledgeable. All that stuff kind of goes out the window. Honestly, it does. Your job really is to look back. A year has gone since last Christmas. See what I did there? But that means that it's your chance to kind of wrap the year up for people. You know, when you turn on TV around this time of year, or you open your favorite magazine or newspaper or whatever, turn on the radio, they kind of fill in the airtime and the columns with roundups of what's happened, whether it's news or sport or music or, you know, best albums of the year or best sports games of the year, whatever. That's kind of your job. Your job is to look back. So the music you play at Christmas parties should be, even if you're playing to educated crowds, even if you're not playing the mobile DJ stuff, and we're going to get onto that, your job is still to look back and to play the biggest hits of the year, basically, whatever that means for you and your crowds. Worth remembering that, because people expect it. The second big tip I've got, and this is a mistake that beginner DJs do make a lot, they think, oh, it's Christmas, I'll dig out all the Christmas songs. Look, listen to your local radio station. You'll soon see that yes, it's Christmas. Yes, the adverts tend to have a few sleigh bells dingling away in them. And yes, they do play, you know, Whamageddon, if you know, you know, and things like that. But ultimately, it's a case of less is more when it comes to the Christmas music, because people aren't coming out to listen to Christmas tracks. What they are doing is often trying to escape the whole thing, right? So yes, it's okay to flavour your sets with a few things that point out the time of year, but really don't overdo it. And if you're going to play Christmas songs, the problem with Christmas music is, so we always teach here at the DJ school, when you add a genre to your songs in your DJ collection, in your library, when you're tidying up your DJ library, when you're adding, you know, house or pop or hip hop, it can be tempting to add a genre like Christmas music. And actually, this is one of the few times when I think you're probably right to do so. But really, a genre should, in nearly all other circumstances, describe the type of music, as in like it's literally describing the instruments and the tempo and the sound and the style. And Christmas music isn't those things. Christmas music is almost like it's a subject matter for the songs that connects songs that actually belong in lots of different genres. And the thing is, a lot of those genres are not danceable. They really aren't. So yes, at this time of year, people will just sing along to music. But if you can find dance floor friendly versions of that music, as long as they can still sing along to it, they will serve you a lot better in your DJ sets. 2 or 3 sing along Christmas songs that fit what you would have played anyway, genre-wise, is going to be far better than just willy-nilly throwing in any old Christmas hit and hoping it's going to stick. So you can hunt down songs like this in specialized stores where you buy them, in streaming services that have Christmas playlists. That's a good place to look, but also in DJ download pools. They quite often have a section in their general collection at this time of year, which will be remixes, redrums, versions of songs that have been prepared for DJs that they can get away with playing on Christmas dance floors. So do go and look in places like that to hunt them down. All right, we've talked about the music a bit. Let's talk about the crowd, because you need to be ready for carnage. Now, I can't speak for the whole world. I can only speak for the Western world. That's where I'm from. But look, places that I've seen at Christmas time, they tend to pull out what I would call, as a DJ, and speaking to you as another DJ, as a fellow DJ, we're whispering this behind closed doors, they tend to pull out the lowest common denominator crowds. And I'm sure you know what I mean. They pull out people who don't go out the rest of the year. And this means 2 things. One, it means that their musical education is pretty low. Not everyone, but a lot of people. You've got people who don't go out, so they don't really go and listen to what's going on in the music world. So that means that far from worrying about playing the music from the last year, you should also be thinking about playing the music from the last 10 years, because to them, that's still new. Literally, to them, Uptown Funk is still a new song. And so really, you can't play down low enough to crowds at this time of year. You really can't. But also, they're going to be the kind of people who will drink a little bit too much. And quite often, it'll be one of the 2 or 3 times a year when they do drink a little bit too much. And that means you're going to be handling proper carnage. All I'm going to say is be ready for it. Because if you haven't done this kind of gig before, you might be shocked. And so be ready. Now, using physical barriers to protect your gear can be a very good idea at this time of year, or at least have a friend come along to keep the inevitable requesters who are there screaming at you to play this, that and the other at arm's length from you, because it can get out of hand. And so one thing that I think is true when it comes to DJ requests is just, if you can ignore people for a little while, quite often they're so drunk they'll go away. And so look, just be ready for it. That's all I'm going to say. If you're playing New Year's Eve, especially if you're playing New Year's Eve, I think it's really important to nail the midnight moment, because that is the moment everyone's going to remember. Normally at gigs, the moment everyone remembers is the final song. So our advice to our students when we're teaching them and coaching them to play their first gigs is make sure your last song is a good one, because that's the one everyone's going to go home singing. And that's the one that everyone is going to remember your set by. It just is. I think on New Year's Eve, the song you play at midnight is the one. However, what you do before is crucial. So look, again, I can't speak for everyone. All I can do is speak for the people who we teach and the gigs that we've played. But the countdown to midnight is really important. Turning on the mic and screaming 10, 9, 8, 7, okay, it's just about doable. At least you've acknowledged that it's happening. But getting the time right so that whatever you're doing at bang on midnight happens at bang on midnight is very important. Everyone's phones nowadays are banged to the second on the right time, so you better be. But also, nowadays it's quite easy to find kind of pre-prepared countdowns. So go and have a listen to a few. Have a search online, you'll find them. where you can play something that's just had a little bit more thought put into it. And you don't need to do it yourself. Like I say, there are pre-prepared countdowns available. My other tip for New Year's Eve is at midnight, when you've done that countdown, stop at midnight. Just stop. And if you can, get the house lights on for a little while. Only 30 seconds or so, because people want to go and find their friends. They want a midnight kiss. They want a New Year's Eve, catch up with people. Not for very long, but they do want that time. It can be very nice to just stop the music and let people have that moment, and then come back in with a proper banger. Come back in with a track that you really have thought hard about. Because I can't tell you what that track is for your dance floors and for your crowds, but think hard about it, because that is the one that they're going to remember you for. So my final tip for your Christmas parties and your New Year parties is not to worry too much. Especially if you're a new DJ, or you've been booked and paid more money than you're used to, and you can get paid 2-3 times the amount of money at these kind of gigs that you can for the rest of the year. You are, and I'm sure with all the best intentions, thinking, I really have to do a good job of this. And that puts a lot of stress on you when there's a lot of things against you. The truth is that the bar is set very, very low indeed for these kind of parties. It just is. And they're going to take their own course. And there's not an awful lot you can do to change that. As long as you follow some of the tips I've given you above, and as long as you're prepared for some of the things we've talked about here, I kind of guarantee you're going to do a good job. And you really shouldn't worry too much. I've got a couple of stories for you that I think illustrate it really well. I was once invited by my friend Wayne to join him on the River Thames on a party boat. So if you know London, and if you know the party scene there, you'll know that there are boats on the Thames that go up and down, and you can hire them along with a DJ and a bar. So companies tend to say, oh, well, that's something cool. We'll do that at Christmas. We'll hire one of the Thames party boats. So Wayne said, come and join me on my party boat. I'm playing to a travel agent. They're having their Christmas party. And so all these young travel agents were on board this boat. And it was quite funny because I could only join them for an hour. So the boat came and picked me up at one of the piers on the south bank of the Thames. And everyone on the boat was like, what are we stopping for? And I got on, felt quite special. And I got on. Anyway, the boat had people on board for about an hour. And Wayne had been playing for about an hour to an empty dance floor. Everyone was in the bar next door getting drunk. And Wayne was playing Robin S., Show Me Love, Ultra Nate, Free, already really big lifetime dance tunes. We're going to talk about 90s dance music in a minute, but he was already playing that kind of music. But no one was dancing. They just weren't taking the bait. And Wayne chatted to me for a bit. He said, Phil, I'm going to have to do it. And apologies for my language here, but I'm going to tell the story how it happened. He said, I'm going to have to open the shit folder. So Wayne opened the folder on his desktop, which was entitled What I Just Said. It was full of absolute lowest common denominator music, the biggest Christmas hits that you could dance to of all time, and a few other records that were just the kind of things that he'd get booed off for playing at any other time of year. And as soon as he dropped the first one, the dance floor filled up. And he smiled and said, you got to do what you got to do. I looked at my watch. It was about 8:30 in the evening. And he's already in that folder. So Wayne texted his mate. His DJ friends had divided and conquered that night. They were playing all over the place. High demand times. Texted his friend and said, I'm already in the folder. And his friend texted back, so am I, Wayne. So there you go. It really is one of those times of year where you're going to have to do that. And the second little story I wanted to tell you is just something that happened year after year back when I was playing a nightclub. I used to play a nightclub in Manchester called Tangled. And at Tangled, we used to do a New Year's Eve party. We used to double, treble the price of the tickets. We never had any guest DJs. It was just us. So, we weren't paying any guest DJs. We had double or treble the price of the tickets. That night alone paid for, the first quarter of our year. I mean, that night alone set us up for a good year financially. And so it was a great night, but it suffered, and I'm using the word advisedly, a lot of the things we've just talked about. Now, this was quite a cool nightclub, right? So we weren't playing Christmas songs, and, the punters had come out all year round, so they weren't utterly clueless. But there was a lot of that kind of vibe going on that I've just been talking about. It was a challenging night. We always went home exhausted, but hey, counting the money helped us. The Saturday that followed New Year's Eve, now remember New Year's Eve, right? It could be any day. But the next Saturday, I always DJed on my own. My DJing partner didn't want to do it, wanted a week off. I always did it. It just kind of became a bit of a challenge. But challenge isn't the word. It became a bit of a tradition. That's the word I'm looking for. Now, the club had 2 floors. We only ever opened 1 floor. The club opened till 4 a.m. We only ever opened till 2 a.m. This was just to kind of like open the doors, couple of bar staff on, and me. And I just played music, and it took a while to fill up. We probably got 150, 200 people in, as opposed to 1,000. But it was only 1 room. And it was good because these are the hardcore clubbers who wanted to go out. I mean, sometimes it was literally the 2nd of January because that's when the Saturday hit. But I did it every year. Now, what I used to do was take my 2 record boxes, because it was record box time of year, and I'd pull out all the records that I had played on New Year's Eve. So now my record boxes are full of the stuff I hadn't played on New Year's Eve. And then I'd go to my collection, I'd flick through the year's records, and I'd pull out other stuff I hadn't played enough that year that I loved. So now I had a kind of plan B set. This was all the stuff that I would count as the purest music, the non-commercial music, the tracks that by definition weren't the biggest tracks of the year. And I'd play those. And you know what? Those gigs were absolutely brilliant. I loved them. I mean, I still think about them now. I still wish I could play gigs like that now, because we had a hardcore crowd and I was playing the music that I mean, some of it surprised me because I hadn't had a chance to play it, but I knew I liked it. So look, 2 different types of gig, sometimes only a day apart, but they both had something in common. They both worked for the crowd that were there, and they both connected everyone. So there you go. How to survive DJing Christmas parties. Good luck if you're playing such a party this Christmas. And some of you are indeed. Christian in the live comments, hello students in the live comments, said, as a techno and hard house DJ, I do like trolling people with a bit of Mariah Carey. I love that. And Benedict says, I do tend to play a few Christmas songs in my DJ sets around this time of year, but not that many. It's definitely a good tactic. And Brooke is playing a Christmas craft vendor fair out in the sticks next Saturday. So Brooke, good to hear. Now I want to talk about something that I spotted over on socials. So thank you to the person who mentioned this in the last week or 2. It's true, but it happens every few years and it does embody a bigger truth. And this person had written over in Reddit somewhere, I think, why 90s Eurodance is your new secret weapon. Now, this was in a mobile DJ forum, but they hit on a nugget of absolute truth here. So 90s Eurodance, if you're not used to the phrase or the genre, it's things like No Limits by Too Unlimited or What Is Love by Hadaway, Rhythm Is a Dancer by Snap, one of my favorites, Rhythm of the Night by Corona. I'm sure you're getting the vibe here, you know, Culture Beat, Venga Boys, all that kind of stuff. And this DJ was arguing it's your new secret weapon. And I think they're right. You know, we've got mobile DJs who will always drop in a bit of Sweet Caroline and a bit of Journey and, you know, but these songs are being replaced by the kind of music I just read out. And I think it's true to an extent. I don't think the older music ever gets fully replaced. I think that the wonderful thing about pop music maturing since the 50s is there are still tracks you can play all the way back to then. It's just that they get added to, and they're being added to now by some of the best tracks from the 90s. You know, we draw a distinction at Digital DJ Tips when we're teaching playlisting and programming music of the difference between hits of the time and timeless hits. So you get hits of the time, right? We can all name the big records right here, right now, but not all of them will cross over to be timeless hits. When they do, they literally become timeless. So the 90s, the best of 90s Eurodance are becoming timeless hits now. I just read out a few of them. There are others. I think the trick about realizing why this is happening and understanding it and then expanding it out further is to do the maths, really, on your audience's timeline. Because now at those big mobile DJ events, at the weddings today, and at parties, the big milestone parties, the 30s and 40s and that kind of thing. The people you're DJing for were kids when this music was out, and that gives it that nostalgia vibe. That means it is becoming timeless. And I think there's something a little bit unique now as well that wasn't there a generation ago, and that is TikTok. Because the music from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s and noughties is now becoming timeless because TikTok is using it, and it is becoming rediscovered quicker. And these tracks are crossing from hits of the day to timeless hits very quickly. And so today's audiences kind of don't know what decade these big songs are from. And 90s Eurodance has just become one of those genres, one of those eras that has crossed into it, mainly because the nostalgia vibe is there, because these people in their 30s and 40s, even the late 20s, the millennials and so on, getting married, are now looking back, and that's their era, that's their nostalgia. So doing the maths on your audience's timeline as a mobile DJ is really important. Asking yourself, what were my audience listening to as teenagers? Now this really comes into its own, and this is where we're going to leave 90s Eurodance besides for a second and just cross over into the bigger lesson here. This really comes into its own when you're playing to multi-generational dance floors. So we all know them, right? The weddings, the places where the person paying the bills is probably the father or mother or parents of one of the people getting married. And so this means that their interests are at heart here as well. They're paying you. And of course, their generation are there too. The uncles and aunts are there. And maybe even a generation above that as well. The grandpas and the grandmas and so on. And so you've got generations from grandparents down to parents, down to, and I'm using a wedding as an example, down to the couple getting married, down to the kids of that generation. Maybe you've got 4 generations there. You better know what songs each of those generations are vibing to. Now, the kids, it's going to be the hits of the day. The people getting married, we've already talked about. The parents, well, there's your Sweet Carolines. There's your stuff from the 70s and 80s and 90s, early 90s. And then you've got the grandparents. So you better have a few oldies in there from the 60s as well to drop in. These kinds of DJs that figure this out, that literally do the maths on the dance floor, are the ones who will have that wonderful feeling at the end of the night where they've got a messy dance floor full of everyone, quite often not even dancing, quite often stood still on the dance floor, hugging each other or their palms wide, just singing. But what a lovely position to be in. And if you've done the job right the rest of the night, that's where you're going to find yourself. Now, preparation is the key here. It's not really about technique. Yes, technique helps. Yes, having a few tricks up your sleeve helps. Being able to transition cleanly between tracks helps. And of course, as a DJ school, we teach all that in our mixing courses. But the music comes first. And so it's something you'll never fully master. And that's the joy. That's taking us back to this question of why is 90s Eurodance now having a moment? Music never stands still. Everything else does, right? Now, I know that gear changes and the way you prepare your sets changes and the buttons on your DJ gear change, but ultimately all that stuff is finite. All that stuff is learnable. If you've got 2 music sources, a pair of headphones to listen to one of them, speakers so the crowd can hear the other one, and a way of blending between them, you've basically got everything sorted apart from what you're doing on those decks. In other words, what the crowd are hearing. And that's the bit that no DJ, whether you've been DJing for 4 weeks or 40 years, ever fully masters. I think that's what keeps us coming back. But 90s Eurodance, I would argue for a lot of DJs, is becoming the new secret weapon. Is the rhythm of the night, and rhythm is a dancer, and what is love? Is that replacing Sweet Caroline and Don't Stop Believing and all those hits that have been working for so long for so many DJs? I think it could well be. So in the comments, live students, thank you very much. I'll just read out 1 or 2. History repeats, says Mixmaster G, and points out it's also a great track by the Propeller Heads with Shirley Bassey. There you go, a true train spotter there. Thank you for that. And Simon says, I think it's about catchy synthesizer hooks, talking especially about this type of music. I think you're right. I think that the 80s kind of brought those catchy synth hooks that really haven't gone out of style ever since. A lot about the music has changed, but they've remained. It's very true. You only have to listen to the music from The Weeknd and, Ed Sheeran when he's getting dancey and all these kind of artists nowadays to hear those same hooks going on that have been going on for 40 years. I think you're quite right there. Thank you for sharing that. Well, we've covered why 90s Eurodance is your new secret weapon and how to survive Christmas parties. But we're getting near to the end of the year and I'm getting all philosophical as we look towards 2026. So next we're going to talk about why all DJing is about connection. So as I say, I've been thinking about my career. I started DJing in 1986. My mum had to drive me to gigs when I was 16 with my mobile DJ gear because I couldn't drive yet. And I've been DJing ever since. And I thought I would share with you the variety of gigs I've played over the years. And then I'll share why I've been thinking about them to kind of come to this conclusion. And let's start at the beginning. So I just have. My first gigs were mobile gigs when I bought some DJ gear when I was still at school with my friend Barry. Me and Barry set up a gig, little business, called ourselves Golden Lights, named after the B-side of a Smiths single. And we, as I say, we had to get lifts to gigs because we weren't even 17. Started playing mobile DJ events. It grew into something quite big. We ended up playing our school end of year parties and we ended up playing the district school end of year parties. We ended up just as 17, 18-year-olds hiring a nightclub in town and getting all the local schools to come out and literally playing gigs where just for a little while the schools stopped fighting with each other and danced together, which was nice. Uniting all the kids who'd normally be fighting was one of the first kind of gigs I played. But then around that time as well, in fact, it was before then, I was playing in a band. So I taught myself guitar about the age of 12 or 13. And I formed a band at school and we ended up playing, well, it was effectively DJ gigs. And I'll tell you why, because we learned a lot of cover versions and we also wrote a few songs of our own. But we used to set up in the local pubs again. We were kind of creeping in underage and got our mates to creep in underage as well. Hey, they were the days. And we'd play the upstairs rooms in pubs and at the marketplace. The marketplace in Stockport, where I was from, had 4 or 5 pubs. Had the Edgeley Arms is the only one I remember the name of, and a few others. And we used to literally play one week and one the next week and one the next week. And they'd always have a function room upstairs with a sticky carpet. And they'd have a bar downstairs. They'd never have a bar upstairs. So, we would literally be walking downstairs to buy drinks and they'd leave us kids alone upstairs. It was awesome thinking back. But we'd set our gear up. There wasn't even a stage often. Band, drummer, bass player, me on rhythm guitar. We had a lead guitarist and quite a talented singer and play these songs. But we'd leave the gaps out. So we'd literally segue from one song into another. And we had people dancing from beginning to end. And I remember my friends from school, quite often kids I didn't know, so kids I wasn't talking to, but who I kind of liked the look of from the distance, they'd be dancing to my music. And I think we've done it. We've got everyone together here. That feeling, we've got everyone together. Same feeling that I was getting playing music in those very early gigs to schools, to kids from other schools. And we'd, literally you could go into another district back then and be beaten up because they didn't recognise you. That's what it was like in Northern England in the 80s. But we were united. That vibe, all being united. So what happened next for me was the rave scene, was the early 90s. I went off to college and rave hit and we started to go to clubs and I bought my decks and I taught myself beat mixing and we were driving around to illegal raves in forests and service stations around the north of England. That was the formative years for me really when it came to dancing. Now, you've got to understand that at that time in England, we had a government where the Prime Minister, a woman called Margaret Thatcher, was literally telling the country, and these are her words, there is no such thing as society. These were horrible times to be a young person, scared that your haircut was wrong, scared that you were dressed wrong, scared that you would cross over to the wrong side of town and end up getting beaten up or chased away. All of a sudden, there was this scene where everyone accepted everyone, where everyone was united by everything that was going on, the culture, the music and all the rest of it. And you'd end up sat down on some sweaty dance floor, dripping wet from dancing all night, with someone from the next town saying, why were we fighting? What a lovely time. The whole thing, the unity of it was just awesome. And I had to have a part of it. And that's what set me on my path to what I'm doing now. And that was 1992. So look, we're talking 33 years ago, 34 years ago. Wonderful, wonderful times. Uniting people. Couple more examples. COVID hit, right? So COVID hit, we're a DJ school. Suddenly we're all stuck at home and our audience are all stuck at home. So I creep out, kind of like semi-illegally, to this office. I grab some of the DJ kit and I creep home again and we set it up at home. Some of you will remember this. I did some gigs that I played every week or every other week for months, years even, I think maybe a couple of years, on my balcony, DJing. I figured out this is how we got into live streaming DJ sets. Figured out how to set all the gear up so I could live stream, and we played sets. We had requests. I had the phone there, so I was taking, I was following the audience, and we, not only me but other people here at Digital DJ Tips, Steve and Ben did it as well. But mine were out on the balcony, and we did this for, as I say, quite a while. I still get people now saying, please, they were so much fun, can you bring them back? It felt really important at the time. My kids were tiny. They were dancing with their teddy bears in the background and so on. It felt really important at the time for our own sanity, but also to hold the school together when none of our DJs could actually go out and play gigs, and just to, again, unite people through music. And then now to bring it bang up to date, over the last year or two, this all started because the local radio station down the road sold off their old record collection. They'd gone digital, but they'd put all the records in this room and locked it. But then the whole TV and radio station here in Gibraltar, where I live, the whole TV and radio station moved to a new premises, and they had to get rid of this stuff. So they sold it to someone. It's not what you know, it's who you know here. And someone knew them and got all this collection. But then it started drifting onto Facebook Marketplace. And I went and bought like 8 big Bag for Life bags of 7-inch singles, which are, they had their heyday in the 70s and 80s, of course, the 7-inch single. And so most of them were from the 60s, 70s, 80s, some from the 90s. And I spent months going through them all. Most of them were utter rubbish, but I got maybe 150, 200 singles that were songs that I'd always wanted. And my idea at first was to buy one of those old-fashioned jukeboxes, because I thought I've always wanted a jukebox. We'll have a jukebox in our house. I'll get my 300 best records of all time in there. This will be my opus. This will be my, when I'm dead and gone, that jukebox, that's what I want you to remember about the music that mattered to me, right? This was my big idea. But I realized quite quickly that I didn't want that, because I wanted to play these records to other people. To me, it was about sharing that music that I absolutely am so passionate about that I'll go online and spend £30 on a record because I really need it and there's only 500 pressings of it or whatever. So it quickly turned into me building a little 7-inch vinyl DJ setup. And I ended up playing a retro event just around the corner from where I'm talking to you now. You could literally see where I am now, this building from where we played. It was like a festival where all the local bands played. It was called Back to the Classics, with the old Back to the Future, branding. And we set my gear up on stage. It was all wobbling, and the sound engineer had to do some very clever stuff to stop all the decks feeding back. But I played 7 inches. I started with Take On Me by Aha, and then went into, what else did I play? Pump Up the Jam, and, stuff like this. I think the last track was Gold by Spandau Ballet. It was proper big tunes from back in the day, but it connected everyone at the end of a gig where the bands had been playing that kind of music as well. We had a wonderful time, an amazing time. So look, there's 5 examples there from my DJing life, all utterly unconnected. As regards the gear, the music, the mixing, the people I was playing to, literally the decades I was doing it in. And so what unites all of these things? It's the connection through music of the dance floor. So the lesson here, I think, is when you close your eyes as a DJ, and I'm talking to you if you're a brand new DJ, if you've always wanted to DJ and you've never done it, or you just feel like you've lost your way a little bit. When you close your eyes and imagine that wonderful moment where you're in charge of the music and the crowd are all united, what is it? Where are you? What music are you playing? What gear are you playing it on? That's what you should be working towards. You shouldn't worry about your gear. You shouldn't worry about your mixing skills. You shouldn't worry about whether you're doing it right. None of that stuff matters. The tools don't matter. The truth is you should be connecting people through music. I think that's what unites the best DJs. And we all know it. We come home from a gig that's gone well. We know it. My daughter, my 10-year-old at the time daughter, I taught her to DJ on a lowly little Mix Stream Pro because it had Tidal on it and it had no computer plugged in and she could get going straight away. I taught her the echo out. I taught her to fade a track and start another one. She then went off and DJ'd her end of, like, 10-year-olds, I can't remember, the middle school, end of middle school party to the age group below her. She was leaving middle school that year, but she played to the age group below her at 6:30 p.m. And she was meant to be joining her crew, her 10-year-olds, at 8:30 when they kicked out the 9-year-olds. The 10-year-olds are coming at 8:30 and they'd party till 9:30. She was meant to be joining them, and one of the teachers had played the music, but she loved it so much she actually DJ'd to them as well. She had her friend getting all the songs off Tidal, adding them to the playlist she was playing, and then playing them like sight unseen because she was loving it. And she came home with that look in her eye and she didn't have to say anything to me. I knew. She'd connected everyone through music and she was utterly hooked. She'd had the time of her life. So look, I think this is what's important, and I think it's worth reminding yourself of it and being reassured that you don't need to be able to do everything on the gear that we buy. It's fantastic. You don't need to have an encyclopedic knowledge of all music that's ever been made, and you don't need to be everything to everyone. You just need to be chasing that connection, because that is what DJing is all about. So I've got a few comments which I'm going to read out just to end off after that rant. But hey, rants are good. Now, this is from Mixmaster G, who says, I've actually got 2 original jukeboxes. Why am I not surprised? For those of you that don't know Mixmaster G, he is one of the OGs in this whole DJ technology game. And if you've ever tried to get your music collection from one piece of software to another, you probably come across him without even realizing it. So he says, I've got 2 original jukeboxes, but these things are a real challenge to keep playing. And says, I buy my 45s literally by the kilogram and I sort them out later. That's wonderful. Thank you. Benedict says, I think music connects people across generations, whether that be trance or house, whatever. I was DJing at an after party this year and I felt the music bringing everyone together. It was a trance and techno party and it sounds like it was absolutely fantastic. So thank you for sharing that. Matthias says, come together indeed. And Chris says, Phil, it's all been revamped and gentrified now. It's still a lovely place to get some food and a pint, but it's not how you remember it. And he's talking about Stockport Market in Greater Manchester in England. Oh, Stockport Market back then. Trust me, Chris, it wasn't gentrified. It's fantastic, though. Michael says, I did a school dance for 7 and 8-year-olds. I got the best reactions to ABBA, Justin Bieber, and Party in the USA. Wow, there you go. There is an exact example of timeless music working with any generation. I absolutely love it. Thank you for sharing that. I really enjoyed that. I hope that you got something from it too. Thank you for joining us. If you did enjoy it, then a couple of things you can do. Come and join us at Digital DJ Tips. Becoming a member of our community is free. You get a copy of our best-selling book on how to DJ, Rock the Dance Floor, as a thank you for becoming our latest free member. And you can do it all at djtips.co/join, djtips.co/join. And secondly, if you want to learn DJing and you'd like to be taught by the best DJ school in the business, head over to the digitaldjtips.com website where you'll see all our DJ courses and programs. Meanwhile, from me, Phil, until next time, get good, get out there and make the moments. Bye for now.